New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling.
It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 730 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. That's episode 730. I have another great episode lined up for you today. Joining me as my guest is Chris Spurvey. Chris is the author of the book titled It's Time to Sell, Cultivating the Sales Mindset. He's also CEO of Chris Spurvey Sales Consulting. And today we're going to be talking about how to cultivate your sales strengths. And included among the topics we explore are why the conventional sales mindset just doesn't work for most sellers, how to determine when you need to find your own way of selling. This is so important. I've been writing and talking about that a lot recently. How to use experimentation to define your unique sales strengths. Learning how to sell in a way that gives you the greatest confidence in front of a customer, which is so important. And why you need to focus on growth instead of goals. So we're going to talk about that and much, much more. So before we get to Chris, I want to spend a minute to talk to you about VanillaSoft. VanillaSoft is the industry's leading sales engagement platform. So what does that mean? Well, it means you can eliminate sales lead cherry picking by your reps. It means your reps will make more than 2 or 3 outreach attempts for every lead they get. It means each rep will actually follow an omnichannel cadence. Now, to help you with that, you need to check out VanillaSoft's Ultimate Guide to Prospecting. Daniel Disney and Daryl Prale will show you how to combine cold calling with social selling for outrageous results. So you can get that now at vanillasoft.com/Andy Paul. That's me. That's at vanillasoft.com/Andy Paul. All right, let's jump into it. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. It's a privilege to be on, and I'm looking forward to this. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, this has been in the making for quite a long time. So you're joining us from Newfoundland,
yes. Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador. I need to put in our
really? Okay.
the other part of our province, not Labrador as well.
We don't want the, what do we call them, Labradorians?
Labradorians, yeah,
or the labs, whatever. Getting mad at us.
Exactly.
Actually, we've had a fair number of people on the show recently from, in a relative sense, from, I was saying to you earlier, it's Halifax. I mean, there seems to be quite a interesting sort of tech startup scene going on in Halifax, which...
Absolutely. I know a number of the founders there.
Yeah, which when you sort of look at it on the map and so on, you think, well, that's fantastic because obviously you should be able to do that anywhere, but it is a little surprising because it's remote.
Yeah, it is. And Newfoundland is even more remote.
Even more remote, right? And so
we don't live in igloos, though. We don't live in igloos.
So let's see, we're recording this in the middle of August. So has it started cooling down yet?
No. Historically, this yesterday, which was we have a thing in Newfoundland. It's the longest running sporting event in all of North America, called the Regatta, the Royal St. John's Regatta, and it takes place the first Wednesday of August. And that historically has been considered the turning point of summer, where it starts to move into fall. But with global warming, it seems to have changed it a little bit. So we got a few more weeks left yet.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day. If I want to go get cool someplace, where do I go besides putting my face in my refrigerator? Because it gets hot here in New York, and so well, good. Well, thanks for joining me. And we're gonna chat about a few things, a little bit about your own journey to start off with, and earlier in your career, you'd mentioned in something you sent me that your own negative beliefs about sales you felt were holding you back from sort of reaching the next level. So, what were those negative beliefs about sales?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would suggest they kind of line up with perhaps some of the stereotypical negative beliefs, in that I thought that you had to be gregarious, extroverted, have the scripts and the objection fighting, all that sort of stuff, plus be pushy, right? I could tell you a story about my first exposure mentally to sales. Well, yeah, and it's a story similar to many people, I'm sure, listening. That, and I know specifically, 1983. I'm 10 years old. I'm out playing street hockey, and it's a Sunday evening, and I go in the house. Mom has supper on the table, and a knock comes to the door, and it's the Electrolux vacuum cleaner salesman. And
they throw dirt on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Within 30 seconds, though, he was in our living room, and he was doing a demonstration. And I just I remember my mom and dad, who never dreamed of buying a vacuum when they woke up that morning, putting up objections such as the price and so on.
But somehow Electrolux is top of the line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. Anyway, mom and dad ended up buying a $3,000 vacuum that evening, which in today's dollars would be around $12,000. And then they fought about it for the next 3 months as they tried to figure out how to pay for it. So that was kind of my exposure to sales. So when I went into when I decided I'm going to try sales. Yeah.
Was that a positive exposure to sales or a negative exposure to sales?
Well, I would say it was a negative exposure in terms of how I internalized it, being around my mom and dad's energy as they fought around the purchase. And they were largely influenced by a person who had all the means to get over that objection. So I internalized it negatively.
Yeah. And so who ultimately ended up taking responsibility for making the decision?
My mom.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mom was certainly in my life, just to really go deep into the subconscious entrenchment of this whole thing. My mom was my motherly figure. She was the person. And so observing kind of how the reaction after definitely internalized for me, that darn salesman who sold the vacuum that they didn't want to begin with, right? So it was a negative experience out of the gate for sure.
And you didn't start your career in sales, though?
No, not at all. Even though I think I had started a business sort of partway through university, and just maybe my two business partners at the time, because of I didn't have technical skills nor finance skills, I got designated the sales person, right? Yeah. So that was, that's kind of when but you know what? The experience of that led me down a path that once we sold that company, and I'm not talking about any major exit here, I'm talking about a few $1,000s. Once we decided to sell that company, I then said, sales is not for me. I'm going down a marketing path. So I spent the first 10 years of my career kind of in a marketing role.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
so what was that transition then where you said, okay, now I have to confront sales? You're starting a new business?
No. So fast forward 10 years later, my family and I were in a position where I needed to make more money. And I was kind of getting tired sitting behind a desk all day. And somebody gave me a Robert Kiyosaki's book. And in that book,
was that Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or?
Yeah, one of those, or Cash Flow Quadrants or whatever. And in that book, I internalized this idea that I'm an entrepreneur. However, I wanted to earn more money, and building a business didn't seem to line up, right? So in terms of how to do it immediately. So somewhere in the book I read, if you want to acquire the skills of an entrepreneur, go for a career in sales. So I woke up one morning and said, you know what, I'm going to conquer this. I'm going to try to find a career in sales. And so that's what that decision point led me then to a company that decided the owner met me and maybe saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, but he saw a salesperson. And that's when I made the jump.
And this was selling what?
Well, that was selling IT professional services, which I knew nothing about. I really didn't. And he decided to make me his manager of business development. And I was all of a sudden in sales, and I kind of just fell into it because I wanted more for my family financially. And he saw something in me that I didn't know was there. So I decided to go for it and give it a try.
So it was at that point in time you're saying, okay, I'm starting this career in sales, is I should be acting like I saw that guy, Electrolux salesperson, or I don't want to be that person. What am I going to do?
No. So initially it was, I jumped in and thought I had to be that person. And I went and I'm going to throw out some names like Ziglar and Brian Tracy and those types of people. And I guess I internalized a way of selling that was very much in line with what I perceived that Electrolux vacuum cleaner salesman to be. So I tried to be a combination of that, and it didn't work for me. I was months miserable, but I was determined but miserable, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I was determined to conquer it and find a way to sell that was unique to me. That actually I'm phrasing that wrong. I tried, I failed, I was determined, and then I realized I need to find a way to sell that's in line with my personality. So I decided to just start experimenting. And the more I experimented, the more I found a few little things that worked, and away I went, you know?
Well, this is a topic I want to spend a little more time on because, you work with companies all over and help them with transforming their sales. I obviously talk to a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs and executives. And one of the things that seems to be a trend in sales these days is toward greater conformity, right? One of the artifacts, I think, of the technology we have is that it not necessarily enforces, but certainly encourages conformity. I think managers enforce the conformity because, hey, we've got a way now to we have more insight into the activities you're doing, and we have our metrics, so on and so on and so forth. But interested if you sort of see the same thing, because that's certainly what my takeaways are increasingly when I look at companies and what they're doing. And I'm very outspoken in my writing and so on that I think that's a huge problem. So interested in what you think about that.
Yeah. So I just want to understand your position. So you're suggesting, are you suggesting today's day and age we are now at a point where more and more people are selling in a way that feels better for them?
No, just the opposite. I'm saying
opposite.
Greater emphasis on conformity, which is less aligned with who they are as individuals. And so I said I write quite a bit about the importance of becoming the best version of you, not the best version of some mythic ideal salesperson. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you mentioned I now work with companies. I mean, there's a long story to where I'm doing what I'm doing now, and certainly we could dig in a little bit on that. But what I have found, so for me, I really gravitate towards helping individuals who are not stereotypical or or their sales is not even in their title. And I basically help them see how just through consistency of building relationships and having an approach to selling that feels okay and feels good for them, how they can, leverage their own strengths and so on to become effective at getting results in sales. So they're non-sales sellers, as I call them,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think increasingly we see more of those, at least it feels like to me. And certainly entrepreneurs have been in that boat forever.
Yes.
But yeah, that is always sort of the first hurdle for a lot of entrepreneurs is, start a company. Now I have to go sell.
Absolutely.
And they carry a lot of the beliefs that you did that we all do, maybe to some degree, about the negative stereotypes and images and this idea of saying, okay, well, how do I find a way to sell that's congruent with who I am?
Right.
Is tough.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's what I try to do is I try to zero in on some core strengths that they have, and change or flip those strengths to be in line with being of service and delivering value for clients. And a lot of the people I work with are, given my background in consulting, and then, our company was bought by KPMG. So these are people who are subject matter experts in the same way an entrepreneur is a subject matter expert around the product or idea or service that they have. And how do you tap into, maybe it's a strength of being curious. Maybe it's a strength of solving problems and so on.
Do you have so when you're working with somebody who's a non-sales seller, as you talk about, where typically do you start with them, right? Because we have entrepreneurs that listen to the show that struggle with this. So if somebody's saying, okay, I'm just really struggling, not comfortable, and I've made a career out of helping people who aren't sellers learn how to sell. But interesting from your perspective is where do you start with them?
For me, I've adopted a bit of a methodology that's not mine. The methodology that I've adopted is I go after I begin working one-on-one with somebody. I have them do StrengthsFinder, and by doing StrengthsFinder, they read their top 5 or 10, whatever they decide to unlock, their strengths. And what I have found with almost everybody who does StrengthsFinder, they read the top 5 strengths, and at least 80% of those top 5 or 10 strengths, they can say, you know what, that's me. I can't believe that's me. I know it's me. I can't believe that this 30-minute assessment identified it as me. So for me, my number one strength is I'm an activator. As an example, I'm just, number 2 strength is I have empathy. Competition is also in my top 5 strengths. And I'm a maximizer. So I have people do the StrengthsFinder, and what I do is I get them feeling good about the process they went through to identify their strengths. And they read them, they say, God, that's me. And I show them how they can leverage a few of those strengths in sitting with confidence with a buyer and having a conversation, right? And so I leverage StrengthsFinder, I really do, and find it all it really entails is adding a new picture. We think in pictures, right? And if somebody can reframe the picture of what sales is to have some form of a positive energy to it, then away we go, right? And that's the building block. That's the initial building block.
So, well, what is that? If you say, okay, there's something that in common people just sort of have that they just don't get about sales. If someone would ask you, what do people not get about sales? What would you say?
Well, I mean, so what I would say to that is what people don't get about sales. What they get about sales is they think sales is convincing and pushing,
right?
Persuading. And so through my book, the number one thing people take from my book is they get a new feeling about sales that is not pushing, it's pulling. And so what I try to do through this process is then identify how leveraging your strengths having good quality organic conversations with a potential buyer, it's a pulling. It feels more like a pull, right? As I'm working with them, they're changing the image on the screen of their mind that, you know what, sales is not pushing, it's pulling. And I have people.
So how are you distinguishing that? I mean, obviously, I know the difference between pushing and pulling, but in the sales context, how are you differentiating those two? Because I mean, you could say, hey, pulling is coercive as well as pushing. So,
yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah, I would say it's, the best way I can put it is to say it's a feeling thing. It's an intuitive thing. And
is it more of a not pulling as much as leading? Hence, leading from front as opposed to pushing from behind.
Yeah, that's actually very good. I like that. Yeah, it's leading your buyer would be a good word. I agree with that. Yeah. So. It's a feeling thing. And I just know from my experience now, we're having worked with, I don't know how many hundreds of people, let's just say, that once they get that feeling, the feeling comes from having a different image on the screen of their mind of what sales is.
No matter where your sales team is working from, RingDNA can enable them to be more productive and effective. RingDNA offers a complete platform for remote sales teams that gives reps the tools they need to connect with more prospects and create more opportunities and drive more revenue no matter where they're working from. And managers can get real-time insight they need to coach reps to success. Win more deals from anywhere on the planet with RingDNA. Learn more about how RingDNA helps remote teams at ringdna.com/remote work. That's ringdna.com/remote work.
New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast. And I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
So when you sort of started going through this process, what was the first area you experimented with or you worked on? Because I love this image, and I just wrote about it. That's by the time people hear this, will be past. But here early in August, wrote about this idea: is you have to experiment, right? This is how you.
Yes.
This is how you understand who you are. What's the best way for you to sell? This great quote I love from the American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson, who aligns with what you were saying and what I believe is the quote is: "All life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better."
Absolutely. It's only, and again, it's amazing how something like that can impact you. I was behind me is my lazy boy chair, and I spend a few minutes in that every evening. And I read a really good book by Price Pritchett called The Quantum Leap Strategy, or Quantum Leap Strategy. And just this little paragraph on the top, it's like a side quote on every page. And it said, what experiment can you run tomorrow morning to test your limits? And I said to myself, God, it's a distinction, right? What experiment can I run tomorrow morning to test my limits? Maybe I'll go out and run 30, say I'm going to run 30K, right? I don't run. So,
I was going to say, hopefully you've been training before that, but yes.
Yeah, well, but if I set 30K as my limit, or whatever that is in miles for anyone listening in the United States, I'm probably going to get 7 or 8K. But I'm going to know what my limit is, right? So it's running these little experiments, I think, is a really clever idea.
Yeah, well, I think that it's funny. On certain aspects of selling, especially you see proactive outbound. There's a lot of emphasis on testing, A/B testing, right? We're going to test subject lines. We're going to test, opening paragraphs, We're going to test these things we do sort of remotely, right? Our email outreach, our cold calling script. And I think what a lot of sellers don't get is, well, that applies to every conversation you have with a buyer, every interaction you have, not just through prospecting, through middle of the funnel, your discovery calls. Well, maybe I'll ask this question this way today because it's different than the way I've been doing it. And yeah, I know I could be better.
Yes.
So let me experiment with that. And
absolutely.
And so when we talk about experiments, at least from my perspective, and I think with yours as well, is that's what we're talking about. Is be able to do that though is you just can't operate on autopilot, right? You have to be conscious of the fact that you're learning, you're trying to learn, you're being deliberate in how you sell, and so tweak it, and then just you can write it. You can write it down if you want to, but first of all, don't tweak a million things at once. Tweak one so you can remember it, and then repeat it 4 or 5 times and see if it works.
Exactly. I think probably the most important aspect of that is to ensure you're taking a very objective look and a view to it, right? Because you can rationalize anything. So if you do something once or twice or 3 times, you can convince yourself that it's the right way, even though you've failed 3 times, right? This is the value, I think, of of having somebody who is objective, coming along for the ride and giving you feedback and challenging your thinking and so on, right? I guess so. What I'm saying is that's the value of a coach, is to do that, this idea of experimenting, and then maybe sitting down every Monday morning, looking at your past week or on Friday before you leave for the afternoon, and having a good look at what you did, and then making some objective decisions to try something a little bit different, make a few tweaks the next week, and do that every Friday until you're getting to certain numbers that you hope to, that you feel are reasonable. Not everyone's going to say yes. So pick a number that you find is reasonable, and kind of start working your way towards that by experimenting and by pivoting around what works, right? So I'm with you. I think that's extremely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, there's who was it? John Maxwell quote. See here, playing on my computer, which I love, which speaks to this specifically. Is the quote was, "If you focus on goals, you may hit your goals, but it doesn't guarantee growth. If you focus on growth, you will grow and you'll meet your goals."
Meet your goals. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great quote for people to keep in mind. Is really the business that you should be trying. If you're in sales and you're thinking, okay, we've got a number, you got a quota, and so on. But what your mission should be is to grow.
Yes.
Right? And by growing, I mean growing personally, growing professionally, doing the things that Chris is talking about here, the experiments, the continual sort of deliberate change of what you're doing to try something else, always sort of test back and forth, A/B. Yeah. If you set the mission to grow, if you Brian Tracy talks about the value of reading, and I stress the value of reading as, Brian Tracy's quote was, if you read a book a week in your field, in 12 months, you'd be in the top 5% of earners in your category. A little hyperbole there, but I think basically he's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think action. It comes down to action. And the one thing I have learned is that there's a segment of the population that are willing to do the things. I read somewhere, if successful people are willing to do the things that failures just will not do, right? And so action is very important. And from my perspective, what I've learned is that action is a result of, everybody needs to have some form of inner desire to grow, and which I guess the word is self-motivation. And but
don't you think there's an issue that we don't, and I'm talking broadly in terms of the sales industry, but when I look at, we've got these high rates of attrition in sales and high turnover rates, right? There are individual contributors, you see statistics like every 12 to 14 months they're turning over, and VPs of sales, every 18 months. That's a problem. And I think for me, a lot of that, what you read, and Gallup, who did StrengthsFinder, one of their surveys was that, hey, people are primarily leaving because they don't feel there's opportunity to grow. And so if there's not opportunities to grow, I think this is something really for you as an individual to think about is I'm in sales. I want to grow. Grow, what does grow mean? Grow means become more proficient. Grow becomes be broader in my knowledge of sales and deeper in my knowledge of sales and my customers and so on. Is, okay, what do you need to do in order to achieve that growth? Because too often it just seems like it's just associated with growing sales. And that's why I think the Maxwell quote's so great, because if growth is your goal, sales are going to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important for companies to align with that goal of growth and provide, like, your company. If you work for a company, your company is really your partner in crime in the fulfillment of your own personal visions. And if the company you're working with is not providing you with those growth opportunities, maybe you're with the wrong company, right? I really find companies need to align with that exact thing, their employees who desire to grow and learn and thrive and flourish type of stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't see enough of it though.
No, you're right. But
we see half-hearted, half-assed attempts. I mean, companies so often is, our training budget we're going to consume for our sales kickoff in January. And it's like,
yes.
Okay, how does that help? How does that help anybody to do that? And so instead of saying, look, hey, here's something we can do every day of the year, and we have programs that we sell through the Sales House to companies, and increasing companies are looking at it, but the initial pushback is almost always, the initial objection, if there is one, is, we don't have time to do that. And it's like, we don't have time to grow.
Right.
You don't have time to invest in your people. It's of course you've got time. You've got nothing but time.
Exactly. Yeah. I think as Bob Proctor says, if you're not growing, you're dying. Right.
Pretty much. Right. There's no standing still.
No. Exactly.
That's what I like to say. There's no standing still.
No, it's impossible. Bob goes as far as to say you're still dying even when you're in the grave because you're disintegrating, right?
True.
So there's no standing still. Oh my! But no, I think we're onto something here.
Well, I think one thing we talk frequently on the show about is that the individuals have to take more responsibility, are willing to take more responsibility. This is, I think, really not a hard ask. Yeah, I think, because, and maybe again, it's depending on the situation, you may feel a little bit differently. If you're in a really highly rigid sales process or a conformity-driven sales process environment, maybe not. But even then, to the point we were talking about earlier, is even if you're operating in that environment, you think there's more. What are reps supposed to do to sort of break free of the shackles, right? Early in my career, I was fortunate enough to work for people that gave me enough rope to hang myself. We had a process.
Yeah.
And I used part of it. Yeah. But the part that didn't align with me, I came with my own.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't feel like people don't seem to feel as empowered. Individual contributor in sales don't seem to feel as empowered these days to sort of go against the flow and do that. And to your point earlier, either they need to leave where they are to go find a place where they can do it, or they just need to take the risk where they are and say, look, this is my job. This is my career. Yes, Mr. Boss, I appreciate, or Ms. Boss, I appreciate, the guidance, but I think there's a better way to do this. And fire me at the end of the year if I don't hit my numbers. But meantime, I'm going to try to do this the way I think works best.
Right. Yeah. And I think that going right back to the original story, this is where Robert Kiyosaki was pointing to. If you want, if you're the entrepreneur and the salesperson, in terms of skill set, there's a big alignment there, right? I find the best salespeople are entrepreneurially wired, if that might be the right word, right?
No, I say they're rule breakers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was talking to, I had Wes Schaefer on my podcast, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how, I threw out the idea that some of these larger enterprises, and the name I use, and I hope you don't mind me saying it, was Oracle, and how at the end of the year, as the end of year approaches, they put off the blitz where you can get, customers can buy for X% off, and it tries to force decisions. And Wes made a comment that just leads, from his experience, leads to a pile of lying. Right? What's the status of that proposal? Oh, it's in waiting. Meanwhile, the salesperson never ever sent it in. Right? So,
that's one artifact. I think the other artifact, though, is that those types of sales initiatives really are trust breakers.
Yes,
and one of the four cornerstones of trust is transparency.
Yes.
And so the customer has to be confident and comfortable that your motivations are aligned with theirs, or your motivations are transparent. And just think about, you invest all this time to build trust with a buyer, and they say, have I got an opportunity for you? If you buy before tomorrow, we'll give you a 20% discount. And doesn't mean the customer is not going to take advantage of that.
No.
But in their mind, suddenly it went from being an advisor to a vendor, from a partner to a seller. That's fine. Okay, we'll take it. But the shine goes out of the eyes. They know exactly who you are at that point.
Absolutely. And I know personally, as a buyer in certain aspects of my life, or all aspects of my life, I put a block up to that, right? Big time. My spider senses go off immediately, and even if it's something I need, I won't buy it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think sales managers actually are most responsible for this. Is they tend to point the finger at individual contributors for discounting. And I personally, in my experience, has been, and both through my own career and as a manager and as a consultant to many, many companies, is that, it's managers who really stimulate the discounting more than individual contributors. And I say it's a surplus problem. And the surplus is they've got too many unsold products. Whether it's a services product, it's still unsold inventory, theoretically, of services, or unsold hours, or unsold. They've got a surplus, and they need to move the surplus.
Exactly. And I guess it's also a factor of the managers somewhat wedged there in the middle, right? So they're getting top-down pressure, but they're not the doers, right? So they can only go down with that pressure, and it results. So I'm with you. It's the manager who's ultimately responsible for it, largely.
Yeah. So I mean, and we're unfortunately running out of time, but I think that one takeaway for this is, at least I would leave with sellers here that are listening, is that, and this is hard, but it can be done. I did it in my career. I know many other successful people have done it in their careers. You could be in an environment that's fairly rigid, a culture that's fairly rigid, but maybe you enjoy the job, you enjoy what you're selling, you enjoy your customers, but you're just not aligned with the process. Change it.
Change it. Break it.
Hit you, as long as you're hitting your numbers. If you're doing the job, if your manager, and I'm sure there are managers out there say, screw that, this guy's not in line with the culture, not a fit, misfit, fine. In that case, take your capabilities and go somewhere else. But
there's companies that have become billion-dollar companies by hiring misfits. So and the misfits. And
misfits is not to be a pejorative in this case. It's just that, find an environment where you can do your thing and where you feel supported, even if you have to invest on your own to go growth, to learn. You take an online class, you do whatever, but you at least feel supported doing it. Find those environments, because that's where you need to be to hit your own goals in your own life. And that's
absolutely.
We're all about growth, not goals.
I love it. That's awesome. If you don't mind, I'll just share, because I had mentioned the word self-motivation. And the one thing that I've come to realize is that there's really only one way to get yourself to a point where you are self-motivated and willing to do what it takes to get it. And it really comes down to having a vision for your future that's far more compelling than where you are right now, right? And falling in love with that vision for your future. And that's what leads to the self-motivation. When you really want a future that's brighter, you'll put the physical energy into it, the enthusiasm, the consistency.
I agree. That's a great point.
Necessary. Yeah.
Absolutely great point. And what's ironic about that, to some degree, when you think about it, is one of the things you should be good at, if you're listening to the show, as a seller, is creating a vision, right? I mean, actually, sales, ultimately, if you're in, certainly my experience has been in a complex sales environment, is the way you get the customer enrolled into the process of making a decision is by creating this compelling vision of what life will be for them with the outcomes they can achieve with the products and services you're selling. I mean, that's sort of 101 if you really want to have a successful career in sales. Well, doesn't mean you shouldn't have a similar vision, that, except in this case, maybe you're enrolling yourself, maybe you're enrolling your partner in life, because you might have to make some sacrifices and time, but you have to have the same, to your point, the same passion around that vision as the one you create for your customers.
Yeah, and I guess I love your analogy there. If that's what it is, I mean, it's a really selling yourself on your future, and that to me is what it takes to go out and do what's necessary to be successful. Yeah.
Well, I said you got to get people enrolled in it, and I couldn't have done what I've done over the past 10 years in my first marriage, right? Because we didn't have buy-in to the vision.
There you go.
So that's just sort of a personal example, but it can work on the job level as well. You got to put yourself in those environments where I'm with you. Yeah. So, all right. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure. And
it has been. It's been a lot of fun. It's been deep.
So that's what you get here on Accelerate. So tell people they can find out more about you and connect with you.
Yeah, they can go to chrisspurvey.com if you'll permit me to spell it.
Absolutely.
Chris, spelled normally, Spurvey, SPURVEY.com. And if people want to go there, they can get an electronic copy of my book for free. So just do that. And LinkedIn is where the social platform where I spend all my time, really. I don't really participate in any of the other social platforms. And if you're ever in Newfoundland anytime, be sure to reach out. I'd love coffee.
All right. Well, if it's on your flight path, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Chris, thanks a lot, and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for the week. First of all, as always, I want to thank you for joining me, and I want to thank my guest, Chris Spurvey. Join me again next week as my guest will be Oren Klaff. Oren is Managing Director of Intersection Capital and best-selling author of the book Pitch Anything, an innovative method for presenting, persuading, and winning the deal. And next week, Oren and I will be talking about his brand new book titled Flip the Script, Getting People to Think Your Idea is Their Idea. So be sure to join us then. And before you go, don't forget to check out The Sales House. The Sales House is my growth training platform for B2B sellers just like you. If you're a seller who's reached the limits of what the science of selling can do for you, then the Sales House will teach you how to master the human side of selling to crush your numbers. So for more information, visit thesaleshouse.com. That is thesaleshouse.com. We'll look forward to seeing you there. So thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA Dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.